Egypt vs. Hittites, 1274 BC Battle of Kadesh, the chariots that decided an empire's fate. You came for the world's largest recorded chariot, claimed the night that forced two superpowers to sign the oldest surviving peace treaty in history. Dawn breathes over Syria. The Orontes lies like a blade of water. A young charioteer tightens the leather straps across his chest and tells himself that fear must be folded, not fought. South of him, dust lifts from thousands of wheels. North, a city waits behind timbered gates. Between them, an empire's future narrows to a road as thin as a scar. A whisper passes through the ranks. The Hittites are days away. Another whisper contradicts it. They are behind the hills already. In the royal pavilion, a pharaoh studies a map sketched in Russia. He has marched with 4 divisions, believing speed will break the world open. 2 captured nomads kneel at his feet and swear the Hittite king is far, so far they could sleep by the river. The pharaoh raises his eyes. The nomads do not blink. A single chariot rolls out from the tree line with a white cloth lifted high. Massage or trap, salvation or ruin. It slows. The horses snort. The driver lifts something wrapped in linen, and the captain who receives it feels the weight of a decision he cannot unmake. He does not know yet that the linen hides a lie. The map of sand and river. The road to Kadesh is a ribbon of glare and grit, and Ramses rides it the way a drummer holds a beat, steady, unrelenting, certain that rhythm alone can shape an ending. He is young for a king of such reach, yet the years behind him already pulse with campaigns, monuments, a lineage sharpened by expectation. He has divided his army into 4 great bodies, each named like a prayer. Amen Ra Ptah Set. The names mean order, and order is the only bridge across a landscape that prefers confusion. The Orontes lies ahead like a promise. The city of Kadesh sits on a tongue of land cradled by the river, a fortress on a raft of earth. Sunlight finds its wooden towers and makes them glow. In the heat's shimmer, a soldier could almost believe peace is possible here, the kind of peace you earn by walking far enough with a spear on your shoulder. The dust of Arman's division lifts behind the royal chariot in a rust-colored veil. The men drink little, they talk less. By noon the air tastes of copper. A scout returns to the king, breath tight, saying he saw carts along the northern ridge. Shadows, wheel marks, nothing certain. Ramses listens and says nothing. When your heartbeat is steady, doubt feels like a foreign language. The scribe unrolls a narrow strip of papyrus and pins the corners with small bronze weights. The path is ink, the river a dark thread, the city a square of careful lines. On either side, emptiness. The prisoners are brought in just as the scribe anchors the last corner. Their wrists are bound with rawhide. They call themselves Shasu, men of the deserts between kingdoms, traders when the season is kind, thieves when it is not. They kneel, heads lowered, and when they speak, the accent is broken, but the tone has the smoothness of practiced survival. The Hittites, they say, have retreated north. Muwatalli, their king, fears the open plain. He has pulled back beyond Aleppo. The road to Kadesh is clear. That is a useful story. Useful stories are the most dangerous. Ramses studies their faces. He asks a few precise questions, the kind that force lies to stumble, and their answers hang together as if stitched by a careful hand. He dismisses them with a nod, but he does not dismiss the itch beneath the nod. On campaign, truth is a fire you tend with suspicion, yet the daylight is burning, and momentum is its own deity. He orders Amen to push on, Ra to close the gap, Pata and Set to follow in deliberate steps. The army stretches across miles of road like a snake that could strike or strangle, depending on the thought that guides it. The royal chariot moves again. Leather creaks. The yoke sings softly with each rise of the terrain. Horses breathe in a rhythm that feels like prayer. The king's driver Mena has a scar from ear to jaw, pale and tight as a drought. He watches the margins, the tree line, the low folds of land, the places where 1,000 spears could hide inside the shape of a hill. The pharaoh keeps his gaze on the road that points at Kadesh and refuses to bend. The first omen is not mystical, it is practical. It smells of dust. A handful of archers from the vanguard step off the track and find wheel ruts fanned into the scrub. Heavy, multiple, fresh, not the light chariots of Egyptian make. These tracks are deeper, wider, cut by the weight of a platform built to crash through men. The archers exhale, slow and careful, as if their breath could erase what they see. One runs back, leaps the ditch, and lands breathless before the captain of the advance. The message runs forward like a spark through dry grass. Mena hears it before it reaches the king. He does not repeat it. He does not have to. The pharaoh has the look of a man counting an echo. If the Hittites are close, the shape of the day is wrong. The army is strung out. The army is strung out. The Armen division is exposed. The Armen division alone with the royal pavilion. The baggage carts dragging a ribbon of vulnerability behind them. The map on papyrus is starting to curl at the corners, not from heat, but from the friction of changing truths. When the chariot with the white cloth appears by the trees, it seems at first like an answer to all contradictions. The driver raises the cloth high and slows the horses to a respectful canter. The guard captain rides out to meet him, right hand lifted, left hand ready. The stranger's eyes are steady. His collar is plain. He holds up a linen bundle sealed with a smear of dark resin. Inside, he says, is a list of Hittite camps, a gift from a defector who despises Muwatalli's taxes. A map, he promises, drawn by a scribe who wants to live. The captain hesitates. He can feel the horses behind him shifting weight, as if they too are restless with uncertainty. He takes the bundle. It is heavier than it should be. He thinks of his own mother's hands tying bread for travel and knows that weight has a language. He opens the linen with his knife. Inside a tablet, not papyrus, a shard of clay with wedges cut deep by a careful stylus. On one side, cuneiform scars in the earth. On the other, a faint smear of beeswax. The captain is not a reader of foreign scripts, but he can read intention. Clay is not a soldier's medium. Clay is the weight of bureaucracy, of palace, of planned deception. He looks into the messenger's face and finds it calm in a way that only training can purchase. He passes the tablet to the pharaoh. Ramses weighs it in his hand. He has learned that objects carry character. A spear that killed has a balance you never forget. A treaty has edges that cut in different directions. A lie carved in clay has permanence. The king turns the tablet in the light and says nothing. The messenger bows. He asks for water as if this is all routine. Manna clears his throat. A sound like a hinge that could open or close. Ramses raises his chin and answers the not quite question in the room. He orders the messenger given water, the tablet passed to the scribe, and the prisoners those two Shasu brought back. He will compare stories while the army keeps moving. Confidence is still marching. Doubt has a shorter stride. By mid-afternoon the heat peaks and the river shines with a hard light that makes men squint until their temples ache. The scribe bends over the clay with a wet reed to trace the signs, translating the spine of characters into words that breathe. It says the Hittites have moved north. The path to Kadesh is open. The king can take the city by dusk if he dares. It matches the prisoner's story like a shadow matches a body. This is the first payoff. The lies are coordinated, elegant, and designed to feed a king exactly what a king wants to hear. If you want history told where the air tastes like iron and choices bruise, stay with me. Share this story, subscribe so you do not miss the rest, and bring someone you argue with. Battles like Kadesh are mirrors. They show us as we are. The tents rise like small islands of shade. Amon's division begins to settle by the river bend, grateful for any mercy. Linchpins are checked, axles cooled, leather softened with a smear of fat. The king's pavilion is erected with ceremonial precision, not just for comfort, but because order shelters courage. Ramses washes his hands in a basin. He looks at the scribe. The scribe nods, that careful nod of a man who knows words can bless or betray. The translation stands. The prisoners kneel again at the threshold. The king steps toward them with a gentleness that surprises them. He asks the same questions as before, but he changes the angle, tilting the facts as a goldsmith tilts a coin to catch the light. This time the answers hesitate. Hesitation is a language, too. The men glance at each other and then at the floor. The distance between their words widens. In that thin strip of air between two versions, the truth shows its profile. Ramses motions. Guard sees them. The king's voice lowers, and when it does, the tent seems to bend closer. He asks, not as a judge demanding law, but as a survivor asking for a usable future. Where is Mu? Where are his chariots? How many? How close? Fear cracks the first man. It is not dramatic. A breath stutters. A gaze falls. A body that was upright becomes a little smaller. He says what was arranged. The Hittites lie hidden behind the northern ridge, all their chariots ready, their infantry pressed like a hand against the city's wall. They have watched Amon arrive, and they are waiting for Ra to stretch the army thinner. When the road is taut enough, they will cut it. The second man cannot pretend bravery alone, so he joins the truth with a rush, as if confession itself could be a bridge to mercy. The messenger with the clay tablet is one of theirs. The story on the shard was composed to match their lies. The Hittite king is closer than the sun. The tent holds a silence that feels like a weight across the chest. Men who have marched for weeks realize that distance can be an illusion. You can be one step from safety and find a cliff under your foot. Ramses does not shout. He nods once. A short movement, like a blade tapped against a whetstone. He orders the alarm sounded. He sends riders like arrows down the road to drag Ra toward them. He sends others to the rear to push Pata and set with urgency. He orders the camp tightened, the chariot teams half-harnessed even at rest. The archers cowled in shade with water at their elbows. The wind shifts direction. In the new breath of air, a scent rides in, sweat, leather, the faint tang of horse, the way it smells after fear climbs its spine. Mena steps to the tent flap and looks toward the ridge. The light there seems thicker, as if dust is beginning to practice the idea of a storm. The charioteer with the white cloth has disappeared. When an army turns inside a trap, time fractures. Each moment wants 10 choices at once. The captain of the vanguard stares at the tree line and thinks of his son's hand against a doorframe, measuring small growths in a quiet courtyard far away. The false peace of the Orantis, the air over the river, is heavy, too still, too perfect. Men whisper that even the flies have gone quiet. Ramses stands at the edge of his camp, eyes fixed on the horizon where dust curls upward like smoke from a hidden fire. He senses it the moment before the world tips. Behind him, the banners of Ammon tremble in the faint wind. Horses stamp and snort, their nerves picking up what men refuse to name. The soldiers tighten their belts, adjust their shields. It's the kind of silence that makes even prayer sound like noise down the road. The Ra division finally appears, ranks thinned by the march, faces gray with fatigue. The men wave when they see the royal standards, but their relief is short. From the northern ridge, the wind shifts again, dust thickens, something moves inside it, too organized to be wind. A scout rides hard into camp, his voice cracking before the words reach clarity. "They're here," he shouts, and in that instant, the silence breaks open, the ridge erupts. Hittite chariots pour down the slope, their bronze fittings catching the sun in blinding flashes. The sound is 100 storms crashing together, wheels shrieking, horses screaming, war made into thunder. The ground shivers beneath every stride. The first line of Egyptian spearmen brace too late. The charge splits them apart like reeds before a flood. Shields splinter, men vanish beneath wheels. The chariots hit the camp with the precision of a blade finding a seam in armor. Ramses mounts his chariot before the dust even settles. Mena's hands are already on the reins, his jaw set. The king's eyes are calm, but the calm has weights, it's the kind forged inside chaos. "Not before it," Ride Ramses says. The chariot leaps forward, through the haze. The king sees his own men scattering soldiers, dragging comrades, shouting to regroup, some still fighting in circles of dust and disbelief. The Hittites slice through tents and baggage lines, breaking formation only to reform again like a tide learning its rhythm. They are fast, disciplined, merciless. Ramses drives straight into the heart of it. The royal chariot crashes through the wreckage of a fallen wagon. Mena steadies the horses before the next turn, while Ramses fires arrow after arrow into the approaching mass. His accuracy is frightening, each shot chosen, each target deliberate, but the numbers keep swelling. From the ridge, Muatali watches through the smoke. He does not move. His plan is working too well. Back in the chaos, Ramses' guards form a small wall of shields around the royal chariot. They fight in a circle, silent, breath tight, every movement an answer to fear. The king's voice cuts through the roar like iron through cloth. "Hold the line." Something shifts, a rhythm, subtle but growing. A new noise joins the battle, faint at first, then swelling until the air hums with it. The Egyptians turn their heads toward the road, disbelief flickering in their faces. The dust there is different, lighter, faster, moving with purpose. The Ptah division. They arrive not in full order but enough. Chariots first, archers behind. Ramesses sees them crest the rise and knows the gods still have patience for courage. He signals with his bow, a brief flash in the sunlight. Ptah answers with horns. The new wave hits the Hittites' flank like an unexpected storm. The precision of Muatali's trap begins to unravel. The heavy chariots that once seemed unstoppable now struggle to turn. Their own momentum becomes their enemy. Horses stumble, a wheel breaks, and the rhythm of death fractures. Ramses seizes the opening. He drives forward again, straight into the crack forming between two Hittite units. His chariot tilts, one wheel catching on a corpse, but Mena corrects it with brutal skill. The king looses 3 arrows in quick succession, each one finding its mark. For the first time, the enemy hesitates. Men see it. They feel it. The impossible Hittite retreat, however brief, plants something in the chest that feels like fire. Egyptian war cries rise, raw and desperate. The noise fills the valley, echoing off the water, turning chaos into rhythm. but the field is far from one dot from behind the ridge. Another column of dust rises larger, darker, heavier. The Hittite reserves, Mu'atali's last hand. Ramses looks back at his line. His divisions are scattered, bloodied, tired, yet there's something else. There's something the Hittite king cannot see from his high perch. Resolve. Mena glances at him. If we charge again, he says quietly, we won't come back. Ramses' lips curve almost into a smile. Then we will not return. We will remain. The chariot wheels turn toward the ridge once more. The final assault begins as the sun dips low, throwing everything in gold and shadow. Egyptian arrows streak upward like fireflies caught in a storm. The king's chariot cuts across the slope, striking at the weak edges where the Hittites can't wheel fast enough. It's not power now that drives him, it's defiance. The kind that burns long after logic fades. Mu'atali sends in his final reserve, confident that weight will finish what deception began. But the ground near the Orontes gives under so many hooves. Mud mixes with blood, chariots lock wheels, horses scream and rear. The formation collapses into its own violence. From the city walls, the citizens of Kadesh watch both armies devour each other. To them there is no victory, only endurance. Ramses breaks through to the riverbank, his chariot sliding sideways in the mud. Mena hauls the reins. The horses rear, throwing spray into the air. Behind them the Hittite line falters, not from fear but exhaustion. Then, faintly at first, comes a new sound, horns from the south, the Set division. The road to Kadesh fills again, this time with Egyptian banners. The ambush has burned its strength too soon. Mu'atali, watching from afar, knows the moment he has lost momentum. He signals the retreat, but Ramses does not yet know it. From his place by the river, surrounded by corpses and dust, he sees only motion, enemy carts wheeling back, Egyptian soldiers too stunned to follow. Victory and survival blur in the haze. He lowers his bow, breath trembling. The field grows quiet, but not peaceful. Smoke curls upward, carrying the smell of wood, sweat, and endings. Ramses steps down from the chariot and looks toward the ridge where the enemy vanished. He does not smile. Triumph is too heavy for that. He feels only the echo of what almost was a trap that came within a single heartbeat of swallowing a king. He turns toward the river, where the Orontes runs thick and red in the fading light. The peace that follows is not real peace. It is the pause before reckoning. Behind him, the sound of movement, something large, dragging across the dirt. Mena spins, blade half drawn. A wounded Hittite, one arm shattered, crawls from beneath a broken chariot. His eyes fix on Ramses with the clarity of a man who no longer fears dying. Your gods, the soldier whispers, voice cracking, have long memories. Then he falls silent. Ramesses looks at him for a long time. Then at the men gathering the fallen, the horses limping through wreckage. The banners drooping like tired wings dot above them. The sun slips behind the ridge dot, and in that half-light, something glints from the city walls, metal, polished and deliberate. A reflection, or a signal. Ramses narrows his eyes. The war is not finished. The sky turns to bronze. Night never truly falls over. Kadesh, it drags itself down, thick and reluctant, as if the land resists rest. The air still hums from the day's violence. Horses shudder in their sleep. Men stare at nothing, hearing echoes that will take years to fade. Ramses walks the camp perimeter, the weight of command hanging from his shoulders like armor he cannot remove. Around him, torches tremble in the wind, throwing restless shadows over bodies wrapped in linen and faces turned toward the stars. The Orontes whispers against the stones, carrying away blood it cannot cleanse. The priests move among the wounded, murmuring to men who no longer answer. A soldier catches the king's arm as he passes, his eyes wide, glassy, his words spilling out in fragments. They're watching from the walls. Ramses follows his gaze toward the dark outline of Kadesh. The city glows faintly from within, fires flickering behind the battlements like a pulse under skin. He knows the enemy is not done. The silence feels staged, too perfect, too obedient. It is the stillness that comes when the hunter steps back, waiting for prey to believe in safety. Mena approaches quietly. His hands are raw from rains and blood, his voice hoarse. The scouts say the Hittites are regrouping north of the river. They've set camp near the hills. They might strike at dawn. Ramses studies the distant glow, and a single thought crosses his mind. Dawn has a habit of choosing its own side. He orders the divisions to fortify the camp and keep fires low. The men obey with the exhaustion of those who have seen too much to argue. But inside every movement, inside every footstep, a question beats like a hidden drum. Will the next light bring peace, or the final storm? Hours pass. The night deepens. Somewhere beyond the river, a horn moans once, distant and low, then falls silent. The camp stills, all ears straining into darkness. The sound does not return, but its echo lingers, like breath before a scream. Near midnight, the wind shifts again, carrying with it the faint metallic scent of rain or steel. Ramses stands beside his chariot, hand on the yoke. Mena sits nearby, eyes half closed, pretending to rest. The horses flick their ears toward the river. Even the animals can feel the lie in the air. When the first drops fall, they are warm, heavy, tasting of ash. The storm that follows is not a storm of water. It is the sound of hundreds of chariot wheels grinding across wet earth. The Hittites strike again. They come not from the hills, as the scouts had guessed, but from the river itself, crossing under cover of the dark, their wheels muffled with soaked leather, their torches doused. The first Egyptians to see them have no time to shout. Bronze blades flash in the torchlight and the night bursts open. Ramses is already moving. His chariot bursts from the camp's heart like lightning breaking through cloud. Mena drives into the mud without hesitation, trusting instinct over sight. Arrows whistle past. Sparks leap from shields. The rain thickens into steam as it hits hot iron. The battlefield becomes a fever dream of sound and movement. No lines, no order, only fragments of will colliding. Ramses sees a familiar banner fall and drives straight toward it. He grabs the fallen standard before it hits the ground and thrusts it high. The men see it, even through the rain, and something inside them hardens again. For a moment, the king fights like a myth. His bowstring sings, his sword flashes, the chariot leaps through gaps that shouldn't exist. Around him, the Egyptians begin to form a shape, not quite a formation, but enough to breathe in rhythm again. Then, through the chaos, a horn sounds from the north, one long, steady note. The Hittite lines pause, just slightly, as if listening for permission. Ramesses feels the pause and knows it's not retreat, it's coordination. He looks up. From the ridge beyond the Orontes, new lights appear, hundreds of them, not torches, shields catching firelight. The second Hittite force, Mena swears under his breath. There are too many. Ramses doesn't answer. His mind moves faster than his fear. He scans the riverbank, the mud, the wheels clogged and slowing, the line of wagons left behind from the earlier camp. Then he sees it, the slope of the river itself, slick, treacherous, narrow, impassable to heavy chariots, unless someone makes it possible. Break the dam, he orders. Mena blinks. You'll drown us all, then we'll drown them first. A group of engineers and soldiers sprint to obey, hacking at the small earthen barrier that holds the river's edge in place. The water surges with sudden life, a dark wall that crashes across the lower field. The Hittite chariots nearest the bank try to pull back, but their weight betrays them. Wheels sink, horses rear, screams rise above the water's roar. The flood doesn't last long, but long enough. Ramses uses the confusion to rally what remains of his divisions. He calls out names, not ranks, faces, not numbers. The men respond not because he is Pharaoh, but because in that moment, he is one of them. Mud on his arms, rain in his hair, voice rough with exhaustion and resolve. The Egyptians push forward, not in perfect order, but with perfect desperation. The Hittite line, half mired, half shaken, begins to bend. Ramses drives through it like a knife through wet cloth. Mu'atali, watching from his distant camp, sees the impossible happen, the trap turned inside out by a flood and a king's madness. He signals withdrawal. His messengers vanish into the dark, carrying orders that taste of defeat. When dawn finally comes, the sky is the color of tarnished bronze. Smoke hangs over the river. The battlefield is a painting of aftermath, broken chariots, scattered shields, the smell of both victory and loss. Ramses stands at the water's edge, staring at the wreckage floating past. Mena joins him, silent. For the first time in 2 days, the king lets the stillness touch him. He thinks of the Shasu prisoners who lied, the messenger who brought the false map, the endless cycle of strategy and deceit. He wonders which of them still lives and what they might be telling Mu'atali now. Behind him, a messenger approaches, mud up to his knees. He kneels, breathless. Your Majesty, the city... They've sent envoys. They request audience. Ramesses turns slowly, his eyes narrow. The fires on Kadesh's walls burn low, and through the rising smoke, he can see movement, white banners, fluttering like hesitant peace. He says nothing. The Orontes flows between them, carrying the bodies of men who believed too strongly in glory. And somewhere beyond that river, in the cool halls of Kadesh, another king waits, one who knows that the war is not over, only paused long enough for words to sharpen where swords could not. Ramses lifts his gaze toward the city. The wind catches his cloak, and for a heartbeat the silence feels like a held breath. Then he says quietly, "Tell them to come." The messenger bows and runs. The king does not move. He watches the white banners sway, and the thought that crosses his mind is simple, heavy, and unfinished. Every piece begins as a lie. The bargain after thunder morning drips through the mist like water through silk. The battlefield still smolders, but the noise has gone out of it. Smoke curls from the wreck of chariots and hangs low over the ground, blurring the boundary between the living and the dead. Ramses stands at the riverbank, his armor streaked with mud and sunlight. The Orontes flows sluggishly, as though even the water remembers what it carried in the night. The envoys from Kadesh approach across the narrow ford, 3 men in linen robes, hands raised, their sandals darkened by the mud of the same earth that drank the blood of 2 nations. Behind them, the city glints faintly, its gates closed, its silence carefully measured. Menno watches them from beside the royal chariot. "Too quiet," he murmurs. Even their fear is rehearsed. Ramses nods once, not looking away. Let them rehearse. The guilty always need practice. The envoys stop before him and bow low. The oldest of them speaks in a careful blend of deference and distance. "Great son of Ra, the city greets you. Our lord Muwatalli offers his sorrow for the lives lost on both sides. He proposes talk, not more blood." The words fall like cool water on hot stones. The soldiers nearby stiffen, waiting to see whether the king will answer with mercy or fire. Ramses lets the silence stretch long enough to taste their unease. "Talk," he says at last, his voice quiet but steady. "Words have killed more men than swords. Let us see what yours can build." He turns toward his tent, and the envoys follow. Inside, the air is thick with the scent of oil and damp parchment. The royal scribe sits ready, reed pen poised, eyes lowered. Ramses removes his cloak and lays it across a stool, mud clinging to the gold embroidery like stubborn ghosts. The oldest envoy produces a clay tablet from within his robe, stamped with the sigil of the Hittite king. He places it gently on the table between them. The script is cuneiform and deliberate. The scribe translates aloud. It is an apology, dressed as an invitation. Muwatalli offers to share the city's grain stores with the Egyptian host, to exchange prisoners, to restore the sacred idols captured in the chaos. His tone, though veiled, carries a suggestion that both kings have suffered equally, that both have earned the right to peace. Ramses listens, expression unreadable. When the translation ends, he leans forward slightly, resting his hands on the table. "Tell your master," he says slowly, "that peace written in clay can be broken by rain. If he wishes to speak, he will do so under the same sky I bled beneath." The envoys glance at one another. One hesitates, then bows. It will be done. When they leave, the king exhales, not relief, not fatigue, something heavier. Menna studies him. "You don't trust them?" Ramses gives a short laugh with no humor. "Trust is the luxury of those who have nothing left to lose. I have an empire." He steps outside, into the light that has begun to burn away the mist. The camp moves slowly, a living thing piecing itself back together. Archers repair bowstrings. Priests gather fragments of shields to melt down for offerings. The wounded murmur in half-sleep. Above it all, the city stands silent, its walls unscarred, its flag motionless. By noon, word comes, Muwatalli will meet him. They choose a patch of flat ground between the river and the open plain. No guards within bowshot, only a thin circle of distance. As fragile as honesty, the Hittite king arrives with a small escort, his armor polished, his face calm, his eyes shadowed by the kind of wisdom only defeat can teach. Ramses studies him with quiet curiosity. This is the man whose deception nearly crushed an empire. This is also the man who withdrew rather than slaughter when he could. For a long time neither speaks. Wind moves through the reeds, carrying the scent of iron and wet soil. Finally, Muwatalli breaks the silence. "We are both sons of the sun," he says, "and the sun tires of watching brothers kill each other." Ramses' gaze sharpens. "Then why send lies wrapped in clay?" The Hittite smile is thin. "Because lies are the first language of war. Truth only survives once it's written in peace." The words hang between them, dangerous and intimate. Ramses studies the horizon, then the man before him. "Your ambush failed. Your army fled. You call that peace? I call it balance," Muwatalli answers. "Your chariots broke our flank. My reserves broke your line. The gods have seen enough symmetry for one generation." The two kings stand face to face, the air between them shimmering with unspoken exhaustion. They both know that no victory will last, that any triumph carved in stone will serve only memory. Muwatalli extends his hand. "Let our children carve the rest. Let this field be enough." Ramses hesitates. His generals, watching from a distance, tense. Then he takes the offered hand. The gesture is brief, deliberate, and heavy with consequence. The treaty is born that evening not as parchment or ceremony, but as an understanding, fragile and alive. Both armies begin to withdraw, each pretending to do so from strength. The sun sinks, painting the sky the color of spent bronze. Yet even as the fires dim, the unease does not dot. Later that night, Ramses sits alone beside the river. Mena approaches quietly, carrying a sealed message. It came from our scouts, he says. They're not retreating north. They're circling west. Ramesses takes the scroll, breaks the seal. Inside a single line, Muwatalli moves by moonlight. He reads it twice, then folds it carefully. They mean to hold Kadesh after all, he murmurs. The peace was a breath, nothing more. Mena's jaw tightens. Then we march again. Ramses looks out over the water. The stars reflect in it like shards of broken crowns. Not yet. Let them believe the lie they wrote. The next war will begin with silence. In the distance, lightning crawls along the edge of the sky, a slow flash that never reaches the ground. The air trembles with the memory of thunder. From the walls of Kadesh a single torch flares 3 times, once, twice, then once more. A signal. Ramses watches it flicker and fade, his pulse steady, his thoughts sharpening like whetted steel. He knows what it means. Somewhere inside that city, someone still plays both sides. He rises, cloak catching the wind, the faintest trace of a smile on his lips, one that carries no triumph, only certainty. Tomorrow, he says softly, the gods will learn which king they truly favor. And as he walks back through the sleeping camp, the Orontes whispers beside him, carrying the echo of wheels yet to roll, of horses yet to scream, of peace that was never peace at all. Echoes in stone and red. The days after Kadesh are not marked by drums or cheers. They pass like ghosts, quiet, heavy, untrustworthy. The battlefield becomes a graveyard of chariots half buried in silt, and the Orontes runs darker than memory. The Hittite banners vanish from the ridge, but their presence lingers, the way thunder lingers after lightning fades. Ramses rides among the wreckage at dawn. The air is cold enough to make breath visible, and each exhale feels like a confession. Around him, the men work in silence, gathering arrows, repairing wheels, burning what cannot be carried home. No one speaks of victory. That word would sound foreign here. Mena walks beside the king's chariot, the mud up to his calves, his voice low. The Hittites are gone. Scouts say they're moving north. We could claim the field, sire, call it ours. Ramses studies the sky. A field is not an empire. It's just earth that remembers what bled on it. They both look toward Kadesh, where smoke still curls from the rooftops. The city has not opened its gates again. Its silence is deliberate, its defiance polite. Between its walls and Ramesses' army lies the thin, invisible border between pride and ruin. That night, a messenger arrives from Muwatalli, new envoy, younger, his words rehearsed but trembling at the edges. He brings a gift, a silver tablet, polished to a mirror's brightness, engraved with symbols of both kingdoms entwined. Peace, he says, voice steadying as he bows, written this time in metal, not clay. Ramses holds the tablet in both hands. The metal is cool, heavier than he expects, the etching shallow enough to fade under time's touch, yet something in it feels eternal. He nods once. Tell your king the gods will decide which story survives. The envoy bows again, but his eyes betray a flicker of curiosity, as if wondering which gods the pharaoh means, the divine, or the ones who carve walls. By the next dawn, the army begins its long return south. The wounded are loaded onto carts. The dead are named and wrapped. The road that once pulsed with ambition now drags with memory. Ramses rides at the front, the silver treaty tied to his saddle, its surface catching the sun in brief, accusing flashes. Each mile away from Kadesh feels like retreat, though no enemy follows. The men sense it but say nothing. The songs of triumph are sung softly, if at all, as though the air itself disapproves of arrogance. When they reach the desert edge, the wind changes. The smell of the sea rides with it. Mena turns in his saddle, glancing back at the horizon they've left behind. We won, didn't we? Ramses answers without looking. We survived. Sometimes that's the same thing. He doesn't speak again for hours. In Thebes, when they finally return, the city erupts. The streets flood with petals and incense. Priests chant of victory. Scribes rush to prepare the walls for the story they have been ordered to tell. Artists are summoned before the dust even leaves the soldiers' boots. Ramses watches from the temple steps as the first relief begins to take shape, the pharaoh alone in his chariot, the Hittites scattering before him like leaves. The sculptors carve his arms larger, his gaze fiercer. The reins gripped in one hand while the other looses arrows into eternity. It is magnificent, it is false, and it will be remembered long after the truth is forgotten. Mena stands nearby, eyes tracing the carving. That's not how it happened. Ramesses smiles faintly. It's how it will be remembered. History obeys the hand that holds the chisel. He walks into the temple's shadow, where the scent of paint and stone mingles with the smoke of offerings. The priests bow low, reciting titles that feel too heavy now: Lord of Crowns, Chosen of Ra, Conqueror of Kadesh. Each word slides off him like sand from armor. At night, alone in his chamber, he unrolls a reed scroll, the first draft of his account of the battle. The lines are bold, the tone divine. I fought alone. The cowardly fled. The god Ammon strengthened my arm. He reads it twice, then sets the reed down. The silence presses in, familiar as armor. He knows he will sign it anyway. He knows that lies told in service of pride often last longer than truth told in sorrow. Still, when he closes his eyes, he sees the ridge, the storm, the Hittite chariots pouring down like iron rain, the flash of the false messenger's white cloth. Sometimes he dreams of the flood he ordered, the moment when water swallowed wheel and man alike. In the dream, it is not the Hittites drowning, it is him. Seasons turn. The treaty becomes official. The silver copy is hung in temples across both lands, praised as the work of diplomacy, a miracle after chaos. Scholars will one day call it the first peace of its kind. But peace is just another kind of tension, quieter, more patient. Years later, when envoys from Hatti come to Egypt to renew the bond, Ramses greets them with a practiced smile. He is older now, but the fire behind his eyes remains. They bring gifts, horses, incense, even a princess. The marriage is called an alliance. The scribes call it destiny. That night, when the court celebrates under torchlight, Ramses walks out to the river. The Nile moves slow and endless, its surface smooth as polished bronze. He takes from his belt the silver tablet, now dulled by years, and turns it in his hands. The moonlight catches the inscription, half faded but legible. For a long while, he says nothing. Then, quietly, to the water, he murmurs, "We both won, and both lost." That is the nature of gods who dream themselves in men. The wind shifts again, carrying a faint scent of dust, as if the Orontes remembers him, somewhere far north, beyond the ridges and the ruins. The city of Kadesh still stands older, quieter, its people walking streets paved over forgotten bones. But the battle lives on, not in the field, not in the river, but in stone walls and papyrus scrolls. Two versions of truth, carved to outlast memory, one written in the language of conquest, the other in the silence between words. And in that silence, something waits, because every piece has a second shadow, the one that never signs its name. The wind sighs over the Nile, and for just a heartbeat, Ramses hears the distant echo of wheels, the rattle of reins, the thunder of chariots reborn in memory. He closes his eyes. The world grows still. Somewhere, deep within the halls of history, the Battle of Kadesh begins again.